Hi, everyone, and welcome. We are joined today by Peter Schiff, the founder and CEO of Euro Pacific Asset Management, also the host of the Peter Schiff Show podcast, and also has his updates on X as well, or Twitter, with more than 1 million followers who follow his commentary on economic developments. And one can add also an author of multiple excellent books. So thank you again for being back on the show.
Oh, my pleasure.
So Trump has his ups and downs. I guess, he recently denounced interventionism and nation building in Saudi Arabia, which is a very positive development. But on the economic front, there's more confusion, I guess. That is, Trump hiked, obviously, the tariffs on Liberation Day, and China appeared to be a key target. And then he removed them and declared victory. What do you make of this trade war victory? Is it a publicity stunt, or what do you make of it?
Well, first of all, Trump declared war and then surrendered and called it a victory. The victory is that he saved us from ourselves, although it's not a complete save. I don't think we're out of the woods. But Trump never had the cards to win the war in the first place. I think he assessed the situation backwards. The whole trade war was misguided anyway, because the trade deficits are not the result of foreigners cheating us or ripping us off or bad trade deals. The trade deficits are the result of our own fiscal and monetary policy mistakes that have been made over the decades. Right? These are not new. And so, accusing the rest of the world of causing problems that are made in America doesn't solve them. And focusing on the symptom, which is the trade deficit, rather than the disease, doesn't cure it. So the whole thing was counterproductive. There was never a chance of winning anything. It was all just hype, so Trump could pretend that he was doing something. And now he's won something. But he didn't do anything, and he didn't win anything. But the problems that he claims he wants to cure are actually getting worse.
Well, you mentioned, this is misguided because the reciprocal tariffs, they were based on, the math was a bit unclear to me. Was this only based on trade imbalances, or how did he calculate this?
Yeah, he wasn't really reciprocating in the legal or the meaning of the word. He was just looking at trade deficits and just assuming that those deficits were the result of non-existent tariffs, and then basing the rate of the non-existent tariff on the size of the deficit in relation to the total trade. So the whole thing was just complete nonsense. And the world knew it. That's why nobody negotiated. That's why nobody did anything. It was all a bunch of BS. I mean, the only trade deal we had really is the one with the UK, and it's not even a deal because we didn't even agree to anything. And whatever we discussed potentially agreeing to is insignificant because we didn't even have a trade deficit with the UK. We actually had a surplus with them last year. So they're not even part of the problem. So why are we even negotiating with that? It's all part of the Trump show. That's it. It's all about form over substance. Doesn't matter. Even if you lose, just pretend that you won. And that's what Trump is a master at. And it's not, look, I'm not just bashing Trump. I mean, I voted for him the first time. I voted for him this time too, but it didn't count because I live in Puerto Rico. But I recommended that my podcast audience vote for Trump. So I'm not like Trump derangement syndrome, but, I'm also, not brainwashed into thinking that he walks on water. And, people say he's this master negotiator. I don't know. I don't know if he's a good negotiator or not. I mean, I know he wrote this book, or he had a ghostwriter write a book, The Art of the Deal. But whether that means he's a great negotiator, I have no idea. But I know he's a great promoter. He's a great marketer. That I'll give him, right? I mean, he won the White House twice, right? So he sold the country on himself as the product. So he did a great job. And he's a showman. He had The Apprentice. He had, his hotels, his golf courses, some of his other businesses. It's all about branding, right? He brands, right? The Trump brand. He puts the big Trump on everything, right? It's branding. And so he's doing the same thing as president. That's what he knows. So whatever he does is the biggest and the best. Like when Trump had a steak company, he said, these are Trump steaks. They're the greatest steaks in the history of the world. I mean, were Trump steaks really that great? Probably not. But that's how he sold them. That's how he sells his presidency. He's the greatest. He's the best. Everything he does is the greatest. That's the best. And that's Trump. And so, I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Like so many other people in the Republican Party are just, making excuses about this great trade win, about how he's playing 4D chess and he's the master negotiator. Yeah, he hasn't negotiated anything. This is all the Trump show.
Oh, he's excellent on the branding. There was something similar with the Yemen, though. We bombed Yemen a bit, and then when it didn't work, he pulled back and claimed victory. So, but it works. So you can't deny the marketing skill. But I was curious, though, what are the lessons for China? Was anything achieved? Because it's been argued that now China knows it has to be a bit careful because Trump can put the tariffs back. Others suggest that China only learned how to redirect its export to be less vulnerable in the future. Some arguing that China simply learned the important lesson that don't fall for the bluff and stick to your guns. What do you see being the consequences? How has this changed the relationship between the United States and China?
Well, I mean, I think it's obviously more antagonistic, and I don't think China likes the fact that they're being described as our enemy. Everybody who talks about China, they're the enemy, they're the bad guy. We got to beat China. We got to get the world united against China. I mean, obviously, the Chinese don't like this, especially considering how much money they loan us and how many goods they supply us with. I mean, they're our biggest supplier and our biggest lender. And the fact that we consider them to be our enemy probably doesn't sit very well with them. So I think that they are behind the scenes trying to, get themselves out of this bad situation. You don't want to be the biggest lender and the biggest supplier of a country that views you as an enemy. So I think they're going to try to develop alternative customers to sell to and to loan to. So they're going to hold fewer dollars. They're going to buy fewer treasuries and mortgage-backed securities. They're going to trade more with Europe, Southeast Asia, Latin America. Hopefully, they'll consume more themselves. And so they'll export less and just have their own citizens buy more, which will be great for them. So I think that, we have a lot to lose because China's been a big crutch that we've relied on. They really helped prop up our economy. They've enabled us to live beyond our means, and that's been, to their detriment. We've benefited from that. So Trump's got the relationship backwards. We've been screwing them over, not the other way around. But as far as the negotiations, China got what it wanted. Trump put these 145% tariffs on, and basically said they're here forever. That's it. You want something different, you better come groveling and kiss my ass. And, you need to make these major concessions, whatever Trump was wanting, who the hell knows, because China doesn't have high tariffs, really. But the Chinese said, no, we're not going to negotiate with you. We're not going to, cave into your pressure. We're just going to impose our own tariffs on you. And then Trump basically dropped his tariffs, which is exactly what the Chinese wanted. And so then the Chinese dropped theirs and Trump won. I mean, China won. Now, are we negotiating? Maybe, but we could have negotiated with China before we put the tariffs on. China didn't concede to anything. We didn't get anything. We just dropped the tariffs because they wanted them to drop. But again, the tariffs weren't even on China. They were an inconvenience for Chinese companies, but the tariffs were on Americans. The Chinese tariffs were on the Chinese. Trump can only tax Americans. And tariffs are an indirect tax that consumers pay when they buy products that are subject to the tariff. The actual tariff is paid by the importer, which is an American company. Now, if you import directly, right, if you decide to go on some Chinese site and order a product and they mail it directly to you, then, when the package comes, through customs, they add the tariff and you got to pay it. The Chinese don't pay it, right? The tariffs are paid by Americans. So it's always been a lie. I pointed that out during the campaign when Trump was talking about the External Revenue Service. There is no external revenue. All the revenue is internal. And tariffs are no exception. Now, you can avoid the tariff if you don't buy the product that's imported. So you don't have to pay the tariff if you don't buy the product. But that means you go without a product that you wanted. Or maybe you buy an alternative in America that's a lot more expensive. So you don't pay the tariff, but you end up paying more money to buy the product because you had to buy the expensive American version. You couldn't buy the cheap Chinese version that you wanted. But either way, either you buy the import and pay the tariff, or you buy the domestic good and pay a higher price. But all of the cost falls on Americans. And the Americans that feel the pinch the most are the middle class and the poor, right? The very people that Trump claims to be championing are the very people that he's burdening the most with the tariffs.
Oh, I very much agree with you that this antagonism as well is very negative effect of the whole thing. As the U.S. and China are really the two great economies now, which could engage in more mutually beneficial trade. And indeed, if you want stability in international markets, you want to see the Americans and the Chinese working out some comfortable relationship. But what direction does the United States or the Trump administration want to go with the dollar? Because the main thought is always that they want a strong dollar to prop up as beneficial when you have the world currency. On the other hand, there's always this argument that there's an incentive to have a weaker dollar to incentivize have more competitive exports and expensive imports and more competitive exports. Which direction are they trying to go here? Do they want a more powerful dollar or a weaker dollar? Or?
They want both, but of course you can't have both. The reason our trade deficits are so big is because the dollar is so overvalued. And so the only real way to make a big dent in the trade deficit is to have a much weaker dollar. I mean, that'll do it. That'll just make imports so expensive that Americans won't be able to afford them. And so the imports will come down. And it will make our stuff a lot cheaper, whatever we got, and so we'll export more of it. So a weaker dollar would do the trick. But of course, the weaker dollar means much higher inflation in the US. It means much higher interest rates in the US, which is why they don't want a weak dollar. And in fact, we have to borrow so much money from the rest of the world. If we leveled with the rest of the world and said, we have a weak dollar policy, we couldn't borrow it because nobody would lend it because they'd be paid back in weaker dollars. So in order to borrow money from the world, we have to have a strong dollar policy. But to the extent that we have a strong dollar, we're going to have these huge trade deficits because we have overvalued currency that lets us buy up a lot of foreign goods. So, and then, you have Donald Trump bashing the Fed, demanding that Powell cut rates. Well, what would happen to the dollar if Powell cuts rates? The dollar's going to go down. Cutting rates is a weak dollar policy. A strong dollar would be we need high rates. So, he's constantly saying one thing and then the other thing. In fact, I was listening to Scott Bessent, who was interviewed, and almost within the same breath, he said we have a strong dollar policy, but then he criticized other countries for strengthening the dollar by saying, they're cheating by undervaluing their currencies. So he's saying he wants foreign currencies to go up, but then he also wants a strong dollar. But a strong dollar means foreign currencies go down. So it's like they want to have their cake and eat it too, but it's all just a bunch of BS because they're just talking because they don't want to address the elephant in the room, the real source of the problem, which is that we have too much spending and not enough savings and too much borrowing and consumption, not enough production. And that's because we have a bloated federal government and artificially low interest rates. We need massive cuts to government spending and we need higher interest rates. But we're not going to get that because that's not politically popular. You can't cut anything because the people who get the benefit are going to be pissed that they lost it. And the politicians just want to get reelected. And so they're not willing to piss off any of the voters. And a lot of voters have a lot of debt, including the government. And so everybody wants low interest rates. So everybody wants the very thing that is the source of all of our problems. So people complain about inflation, they complain about the economy, but the reason we have all this inflation, the reason the economy is so weak, is because the politicians are giving the public exactly what they want.
Well, about 20 years ago, when we were about to enter the housing crisis and the global financial crisis, I remember you were on the news quite frequently arguing that we're heading into a housing crisis, and everyone said you're crazy. It's as solid as gold, and you made a similar argument that we spend too much and borrow too much, and this is the source of the problems. But of course, at that time, I can't remember what the debt was 7 or 8 billion. But now, of course, the U.S. debt is almost going into 37 trillion. So it's
Probably higher. They don't even keep track of it anymore because we're beyond the debt ceiling. So who the hell knows where it is right now? Could be 38 trillion. I mean, we just don't even have an accurate number anymore.
But do you see us walking into another crisis now? And if so, how? Again, what do you expect? Will this play out as a banking crisis, or will it be a currency crisis? How do you read the situation?
No, I think we're going to have a dollar crisis and a sovereign debt crisis. I mean, that's just how it's going to end. I mean, we're going to keep on living beyond our means until we can't do it anymore. Right? We're going to keep on borrowing until the lenders stop lending to us. And I think we're already, on that path. The question is, how long does it take, right, to really completely de-dollarize, to kind of sever this lifeline that we have? I don't know, but I mean, the process has started, and at some point, the pace is going to accelerate. What was it? Who said, "How did you go bankrupt?" Well, slowly at first, and then all at once. Maybe that was Mark Twain. I forget who said that, but we're already broke, but it's just a question of acknowledging that. But I think it's going to be slow, and then it's going to be rapid. But exactly when it goes from slow to rapid is anybody's guess.
So you're talking about a default then. Will it be an honest default, or just printing a lot of new money?
One or the other. I mean, those are the only two choices. I mean, legitimate repayment is not even an option. So when it comes to the U.S. debt, the question is, how are we going to default? Are we going to do it honestly and just not pay? Or do a honest restructuring where we tell people, okay, you own a 1-year treasury bill that pays 4%. We're going to turn that into a 30-year or a 50-year treasury bond. So you'll get your money back, but it's going to be in 30 years. Not when you thought. Oh, and by the way, we're going to reduce the coupon from 4% to 1%. Right? So, yes, you're going to get your money back if you live long enough. But if you need your money right now, you can sell that bond, and maybe you'll get 10 cents on the dollar for what you paid. Right? So that's like a default. A restructuring is basically a default. The other thing we could do is just print a bunch of money and say, oh, how much do we owe you? Oh, here you go. Here you go. Let me, a trillion here, a trillion there. Just keep on cranking off the printing presses. And so everybody gets paid, but they get paid in money that doesn't buy anything. And, that's worse than default. So it's either inflate, or default, right? Those are the two options. Either way, you're screwed if you've loaned money to the U.S. government. So that's why I don't loan money to the U.S. government. I buy gold, I buy silver, I buy stocks, I buy real things. I have real estate. I don't own a portfolio of bonds. I don't have government bonds. I have corporate bonds because I know I'm going to lose. It's only a question of how I'm going to lose. But the fact that I'm going to lose is a foregone a certainty.
But could I guess a partial default take the form of sanctions? I'm thinking about what was done to the Russians, where their sovereign funds were seized. And at least in Europe, people like Macron was making the argument, if we just steal the proceeds from these assets, then it's not theft. It's still within the boundaries of the law. Do you see something like this possibly being done to China as well, or?
Well, that's one of the reasons that the Chinese should be getting rid of our treasuries and our mortgage-backed securities as fast as they can, because they're our enemy. So why not default, right? Our enemy owns all this debt. Why should we repay it? Why don't we just default on it? So, I mean, if I was in China's position, I would be getting rid of as many U.S. dollar obligations as I could. You know, because it's a vulnerability. They're vulnerable. Their Achilles heel is that we owe them so much money. So they gotta change that. You know, it's pretty obvious.
So, my final question is just, given that we're heading into crisis, where does the smart money go? Do you go gold, silver, or you're not very optimistic about crypto? I know many people see crypto as the solution, which will, can be an instrument against all the central banks. How do you see this?
The people who see crypto as a solution have a lot of crypto to sell you. That's why it's the solution, right? If you own a bunch of crypto, it solves every problem, right? Because you want people to buy what you want to sell. But people who buy Bitcoin or any of these other tokens are going to lose money. Even if the price goes up, you're still going to lose money because you're probably not going to sell. Because that's the whole mantra: never sell, right? Why do they tell you to never sell? Because they don't want the price to go down. So you have to buy it and then never sell it. Well, what the hell good is it then? But by the time you need it and you have to sell it, it won't be worth very much, or maybe it won't be worth anything at all. So don't buy, Bitcoin or any of this stuff. If you don't have confidence in the dollar or the euro or the pound or the yen, or buy real money, not internet fake money. So buy gold, buy silver. I got a company, Schiff Gold. They'll help you buy all the gold and silver you need, give you a great price, ship it to you quickly. Not try to mark it up a lot or bait and switch you into some collectible truth set or some BS like a lot of other gold companies. Try to push their clients to high margin products. I don't sell any of the high margin products because I don't think people should be buying them. And also just, we invest in real businesses. I try to stay out of dollars, and I don't want to get wiped out to inflation. So my foreign stocks are crushing it this year. Europe, Southeast Asia, South America, tremendous returns year to date. I think that the era of U.S. outperformance is now over. And I think U.S. stocks are going to continue to underperform the rest of the world for years and years, maybe decades. So I think you're early in this new trend. The U.S. was the only game in town for a while. That game is over. And so now you've got to invest abroad. And I've got a lot of strategies at Europe Pacific Asset Management. I've got mutual funds. I've got separately managed accounts. So, where's the smart money going? I think it's coming my way. I think it's investing in my strategy. Either you can do it yourself or you can hire me to do it for you. But I think my team is particularly well positioned to do this. I mean, we know the companies that will do the best in a world where the dollar is no longer king. Where we've moved on from that relationship. You got to know which companies to own, because there's going to be winners and losers as the entire global hierarchy is reordered. And so if you're positioned to benefit from the winners and not suffer with the losers, you're going to have, I think, incredible investment returns. And I think that's what we're in position to deliver at Europe Pacific Asset Management, which is my company. And so people can talk to the representatives there about how our strategies would work in your portfolio.
So for people who want to get in contact with you and your team, it's europac.com, and they...
Yep. Yeah, we're Schiff Gold. Just go to Schiff Gold. You want to buy some gold and silver. But if you've got a portfolio you'd like me to manage, call my asset management company. Or if you do it yourself, my mutual funds, you can learn about them. You can buy them all no load. I've got 5 mutual funds that I think will do extremely well during the very challenging economic times that lie ahead in the U.S.
Okay, as always, thank you so much for your time. It's a great pleasure. Thank you.
I take care.
Bye.